Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hey, welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, we've got an exciting one today.
Did something happen over the weekend, or?
I think we would probably spend the next hour or so just talking about Chauncey Logan, but whatever.
I thought Sam Clark, but yeah, Chauncey Logan can get in there a little bit too.
Kid balled out.
All right, I'm mad you were right about that, but just I think before we dive into anything, we have to say that Three Notched is the best brewery in Harrisonburg, and that's really the storyline from this last weekend.
It's a great storyline, and if you're there for family weekend, swing by. It's Oktoberfest. Our Oktoberfest beers are here every Monday, Minuteman Mondays if you're closer to the area. And every Wednesday, you've got game night there, $5 flagship pint, $3 Minuteman pints on the Mondays. It's just remarkable. But yeah, swing by, family weekend. Weather's not supposed to be great. So if you're going to a game, stay as long as you can, right? Everybody wants that. I won't be there. People know that. But I hope people have a good time. And visit Three Notch while you're in town.
Yeah, it'll be a great time. And over the weekend, gearing up for family weekend, Texas State coming to town, but so is something called Hurricane Ian. I pronounced it correctly this time. Also coming into town, going to kind of mess up some family weekend plans this week for JMU fans and family alike. And also BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, and events with first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, just said that twice, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE. It's scrolling along the bottom if you're watching it on Twitter. That's BLEAV50, BELIEVE50, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. And now we have to start this podcast like BetOnline. That's where the game starts. This podcast starts with one of the greatest comebacks I think either one of us have ever witnessed in the history of JMU sports, maybe outside of Weber State.
Yeah, especially recent history, right? They had a similar comeback. I guess the 2008 game against App State was, what was it, 21-0.5 or something like that? So a pretty cool comeback there. But 28-3 on the road, playing an App State team that sort of had more advantages, right? They've been at the FBS longer. You imagine they're more prepared in terms of scholarships, resources, whatever.
I mean, they're a perennial Sun Belt champion contender. They are the cream of the cream of the crop when it comes to the Sun Belt.
Yeah, so to go down 28-3, I know at that point I was kind of hoping JMU would salvage a competitive showing and was honestly resigned to the mental belief that they were going to lose 60-10. And it was like, all right, but, I had multiple group chats going and they're all very upset. But there was also like, it's the hardest team out. Their schedule gets easier. It's not the end of the world. Rebound from this. And then they started to like make a little push. Well, I guess we'll get into all the details at some point. We can do it now if we want.
I mean, that is, yeah, I think that'd be the perfect segue to break down to kind of give us an overview of what happened in the game.
Okay, fair enough.
Even though we've all probably watched it multiple times.
I'll bring the Tale of the Two Halves stuff up a little bit here too as I do this.
Yeah, let's start with this. Let's start with the Tale of Two Halves.
I don't think that's totally fair.
I agree with you on this take. I'm excited for you to break down this take, and then I'll share mine.
Because I saw a lot of like, it was a Tale of Two Halves. Like they got their butts whooped in the first half, and then in the second half they were awesome. Kind of. But they led 3-0 after the first quarter. Like I don't think anybody watched the first quarter of that game and was like, hopefully this is a Tale of Two Halves game, right? You know what I mean? Like it was a game that they were leading after a quarter. They looked very much like they would be in a competitive game and that they were holding their own. They had some aggressive fourth down calls, which were awesome. Few questions on the defense with giving up some pass plays, but I think it was generally a pretty good first quarter. The second quarter was horrible, but not all of it. It was really like the first 10 minutes of it when they gave up, let me make sure I have it correct. So from 13:45 in the second quarter to 6:10, so not even 10 minutes, more like 8 minutes. They gave up 28 points. So they had an 8-minute stretch that was just horrendous. But then they closed the half really well, which was very important to them actually having a chance to come back and win the game. So they had a fourth down conversion on a touchdown drive to cut it 28-10. And then they had a strip sack very, very deep in App State territory toward the end of the half that was like, I was thinking it'd be 28-17 at half. They're going to punch it in and score a touchdown. Drive stalls, go for a 27-yard field goal. 27-yard field goal is missed. And I was like, that's just very deflating, but whatever. They made it more competitive. But I think it's worth noting that the first half was not like a complete loss. It was 2 like self-inflicted fumbles deep in your own territory that led to touchdowns.
Yeah.
And there were some secondary lapses, but I don't think it was like a full, hey, the first half was horrible. I mean, yeah, the first half was horrible and the second half was great. I think they're kind of positive and negatives in both. And it's maybe a little lazy to say that just because like they led after a full quarter of action.
Yeah. And also kind of like, to me, when you say tale of two halves, it's almost like you were getting your butt kicked in the first half and then you flip the script in the second. And it really was more so self-inflicted wounds, because there was a point in the third quarter when they were kind of staging that comeback. And I just sat back and I was like, what if they had made that field goal and only fumbled it once? Or they didn't let App State capitalize with a touchdown on one of those other fumbles. Like, you start playing the what if game, but even so, like, you're sitting there in the third quarter and you're like, JMU's not being outmanned. JMU's not being out pushed around at the line of scrimmage. They're playing their game. They just had a fumble here, a fumble there, a missed field goal here. And like, it wasn't necessarily that they were just getting destroyed in the second quarter. The first quarter, we all finished that first quarter. We're like, wow, we have a chance, which I know we all were kind of high on. When I say we, me, you, JMU fans as a whole, we're high and thought there was a potential for us to go in there and hang tight with App State. But maybe this is me projecting a little bit. I think we all had in our back of our mind that App State's the better team. They should win this game. Like, it'll be good if we can keep it competitive. But then after that first quarter, hope started to creep in, and then the fumbles happen and everything. And then all of a sudden the third quarter and the fourth quarter, it's what the first quarter was, except the offense is able to finish some of these drives. And yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it was a tale of two halves. I think it was JMU fixing their mistakes and capitalizing when they needed to capitalize. Because what's something that Kurt Cignetti's teams have done repeatedly in this era in big games are self-inflicted wounds that cost you the game. It's the 2-point conversion on the goal line in the national championship. It's last year in North Dakota State, the goal line interception again. It's the muffed punt against West Virginia. It's all these self-inflicted wounds, and you were sitting there thinking, it's Sam Houston State, the epic meltdown, the epic meltdown of just complete mistakes. And you're kind of starting to think, this is a trend in big games with Cignetti coaching him. It's not that he's necessarily getting out coached. It's that his teams just seem to be not prepared. They're not up to the moment. I think this game bucked that trend entirely.
Yeah, I mean, the way they rallied was so impressive. But I think maybe my biggest gripe with like the tale of two halves thing is that sort of implies that it was like 30 minutes App State, 30 minutes JMU. Yeah. And it felt like for like 50 minutes of game time, JMU was either equal to or better than App State, which I think is really exciting for the future and kind of an important distinction. It's not like, hey, they played horribly for 30 minutes and then got them for 30 minutes. It's like they were pretty good except for like this horrible like 4-possession stretch. But other than that, they had a really impressive game. The second half was awesome, obviously. They got some stuff going offensively. And when they outscored them 22-0. So 3 touchdowns, didn't give them any touchdowns up, had the 1-2-point conversion. A gritty comeback win, obviously a great win. There's a lot of football left, but I think this is one that, especially as the fan base, right? I feel like there are way too many fan takes from like all fan bases, not just JMU. They're like, got to win the next game, got to lock in. You can't overlook Texas State. Well, I can, right? Like from my bedroom or me watching a game somewhere, I can absolutely overreact to a game and not look ahead to Texas State because it doesn't really matter what I'm thinking because it doesn't impact the team. So like from a fan perspective, you can live on the App State game for as long as you want. Like this is going to carry me for a while.
I think it carries me too, just being in North Carolina and like Boone is 2 hours north and just there's some
Right.
like it just feels a little bit better. Also, the fact that App State's like so hurt about this game, which I mean,
Oh
rightfully
yeah.
so. You blew a lead. I was listening into a snippet from the Black and Gold podcast. I forgot who shared it. It was, I think, Evangelista or
Yeah.
some JMU fans shared it. But it was just kind of hilarious how wrong they were about the game. And this makes me feel like I'm all high and mighty. My opinion's the right one when it comes to this game. By gosh darn it. But they were like, JMU didn't win that game. App State lost it. We were dominating that game, and we just gave JMU the opportunity to win. And I think that's the just complete wrong lookout to this game. Like, JMU dominated as much as they could outside of their self-inflicted wounds. They held a 33-minute time of possession advantage over App State. They look like the better team. Their RPOs were just slicing and dicing the App State defense all game. JMU looked like the bigger, faster, stronger team, especially in the second half. And yeah, this is going to take me a long. This is my Super Bowl. As a Seahawks fan, I could care less what happens the rest of the season with the Seahawks. You know, like they beat Russell Wilson in week 1. That I don't care what happens the rest of the season. This is that game for JMU. They could lose out, and I'd be like, it really doesn't matter. They beat App State in an epic comeback. And it'd be almost feel a little bit better if even JMU then finishes the season like not good. And you're like, haha, App State. Maybe this rivalry is becoming a thing. But yeah, it was insane comeback.
Insane comeback. And yeah, kind of going off of that, before Centeio took 40 yards worth of sacks, which is what he did on the final drive. I think it was actually legitimately 40 full yards worth of sacks, which JMU has actually moved to a team loss yardage because they're absolutely going to throw out a Heisman campaign for this guy at some point. So they got to make sure the stats are good. But if you take those out, they had 415, I think it was, or yeah, I think it's 415 yards to 298. From App State. Like they were better. They outgained them. So they had, an impressive game where I thought they were the better team overall. Get your head out there. As they were the better team overall. And yeah, I think it's fair to say that JMU was up to the challenge and played well enough to win the game. And I think was probably the better team despite some early turnovers. They stopped App State running the ball, which they've given up 84 rushing yards this entire season, which is still insane. To me, they're leading the country by a good margin in terms of only 28 rushing yards allowed per game. And Middle Tennessee looks like they might actually be a real team. So they have 2 wins that I think are decent.
Yeah, they beat a ranked Miami team. That's insane to me. We beat them 44-7, and they looked absolutely abysmal. They just went to Miami and beat up on the Hurricanes.
They looked explosive, too. Like they had like a 98-yard touchdown pass. Like they were making some big-time plays, and then I don't know if you listened to their coach's presser after the game.
Oh, his quote after the game was the best. What did he say? Like, this wasn't a fluke. I just want everyone to know that we went down here and we out-physicaled them and, like, we are the better team.
He said it's not a fluke. It was a butt kicking, I think he called it. He mentioned that they were 26-point dogs. Like, he knew the spread, which I thought was hilarious. And then he was talking about how they were tougher than them. And he goes, just proud of the guys came down here and knocked those suckers off.
Good for him. I love that. That's fantastic.
It was pretty funny.
What else? I mean, we could go into takeaways. We talked about Tale of Two Halves, but I mean, I wrote some notes as I was watching the game as like trying to put it like,
oh yeah.
As you read it, it's just like sad. You're going down. The things I liked, aggression at the beginning in the first quarter. I liked their aggression. Run defense was always good in the game. Probably helped that Harrington was like the main back, which is RB3 after Peoples and Noel kind of got banged up. Well, did have a rushing touchdown, but didn't get a lot of run. And then not likes pass defense, mistakes in parentheses, common in big games, not playing to the moment, didn't take advantage of turnovers, and this played flat anytime we are away. Like away from home in big games. And then offense has moments. Kalon is running back 1. Latrell, this was written right after his fumble. Latrell ain't it. Maybe as a prisoner of the moment.
I think a little bit, yeah.
But can we talk about Kalon Black real quick? Is he running back 1? Did he take that? Did he Wally Pipp Percy?
I think if Percy's healthy, he's probably running back one. The issue is, and I haven't really heard anything on his status
Yeah, nothing about
like
this.
at all this week. I don't know if anyone asked. Maybe I just missed it. But he didn't play. He didn't suit up. There was no explanation. I have heard no explanation since. But Kalen Black, I think Kalen Black makes more sense as like a top back over um, Palmer a little bit, just because I think he has more burst. I think Palmer is a change of pace who can be really physical, especially later in games, kind of like they actually did use him in that national championship a few years ago when it didn't make a lot of sense, but he was having like fourth quarter run down 14 and was getting a bunch of big plays. His like career stats are also sneaky good. Like Palmer's
Yeah,
been very consistent. He averages like 5 yards a carry over like 300 carries.
yeah,
So
he's really solid. He can bust out a big gain here and there. He does have a little bit of a fumbling problem though.
that's interesting. And then Black had one that he pretty close to fumble that was like overturned on that one touchdown drive to make it 28-10. Because that happened, I thought he for sure fumbled and was like, oh my God, they're gonna lose 70-3. But they obviously came back. But Black's like burst and speed is huge. But then he's also not like he's not just a fast guy who like when he gets hit, he just crumbles. Like he's kind of hard to bring down.
Yeah, and I broke it down in a little bit of a film breakdown over on our
Yeah.
Patreon. Kalon Black's vision and patience is elite, like elite level. His ability to wait, see the first hole close, and wait for a second hole to develop. On his rushing touchdown, there was one hole that he could have hit, and then at the last
Yeah.
second, he cuts in to a secondary hole and that's how he scored. If he went with that first hole, it's a gain of 2, and I think they were on the 3, and you just don't get the touchdown. Instead, he cuts it in and gets the touchdown. There was another one on one of his first carries. He busted it for like a 19-yard gain, and same thing. He hits the hole, and then he kind of runs parallel to the line of scrimmage without ever going backwards, and then finds that secondary hole and hits it and goes. Kalon Black's vision, patience, ball carrying ability, all of that are really, really fun to watch. I'm excited for him to step into a bigger role, maybe as this season goes on, but especially next season once Percy graduates. And hopefully Percy is healthy because, yeah, I haven't seen anything about what's wrong with him at all. Also listening to the announcers trying to announce his last name, and then the play-by-play guys just call him Percy.
I thoroughly enjoyed the color commentary in that game. There's going to be no drama in this one, folks. Looks like it's a drama-free day. And then by the end, they're like, oh my God. What does that do to the Mountaineers? So that was pretty enjoyable. I had a couple other offensive notes. Early in the game, especially, they used the tight ends in the passing game, and it was successful. And Drew Painter made some nice catches. Him and Horton getting involved, I think, is a positive. The secondary receivers, Reggie Brown and Terrence Green, were awesome. Chris Thornton, 1 catch for -1 yard, did catch the 2-point conversion. But if you go back to and you look at some of the film, Chris Thornton, there were a lot of spots where they were putting like 2 bodies on him and really trying to stop him. If you look, you mentioned Kalon Black's touchdown run, the play before that. So it's the Jalen Walker interception, then 2 Black runs. On the first run, they motioned Chris Thornton from, I think it was the slot, but he motions over and then sort of runs toward the sideline, and it freezes like 2 players and lets Black easily get 6 yards, which put him at like the 4. I guess 5 yards and put him at the 4. So like there were little things like that where Chris Thornton, what he did in the first 2 weeks, I think really distracted App State. But for Kalon Black, for Reggie Brown, for Terrence Green to all step up and have huge games when those are like not necessarily the stars of the offense, I thought was really impressive, especially given the stage.
Yeah, Chris Thornton's ability to impact the game while not getting any catches was awesome, because I think the reason Reggie Brown had 4 catches for 81 yards with a long of 42 was because everyone was keyed in on Chris Thornton. And I think Reggie Brown could have been Terrence Green. It could have been Devin Ravenel. It could have been any of those guys, but it just so happened that Reggie Brown was the one that was getting the hotkeys and was getting the looks on the RPOs and was able to kind of pad his numbers a little bit. But he had himself a fantastic game, was really fun to watch. But Chris Thornton did have a huge impact on that game despite only having 1 catch.
Yeah, he was awesome. I think the other thing you did, that you mentioned that film breakdown, which was awesome, by the way, on Patreon, where you can check that one out, where you look through some things and you did a lot on sort of the play action pass, sometimes to Reggie Brown. it's so hard to defend them. And like, I don't know if they're going to go 11-0 or like beat up on everyone, right? But
Well,
they're,
real quick, as
yeah,
you go into this, Peter Mooney did just ask us a question on Twitter. And if you're watching right now on Twitter or YouTube, drop a question in our replies, in our Twitter replies, or in the YouTube comments, whatever it is. And you just mentioned undefeated. He asked us, putting the cart before the horse, does JMU go undefeated?
I'm going to say no, but
I am too, but I know where you're going with this.
they're going to be tough to defend because like the rushing attack is good, even if Percy's hurt. They have a really strong offensive line. Centeo is mobile. Obviously, we'll see kind of how the shoulder hangs in there for an entire season. He sounds like he banged it up a little bit. I don't know exactly which one. I would maybe guess not the right one, but who knows? Whatever it was, he gutted it out in the game. So you would think with some treatment, he'll probably be okay. But they can run it.
Yeah.
Centeo can run it. He can sling it. They have multiple receivers who are good. But you showed in the film breakdown, so many App State defenders, like safeties and linebackers, when they would run play action, were flying to the line of scrimmage, where it's leaving Reggie Brown one-on-one in a slant. And if you have him or Terrence Green or Chris Thornton, any of those guys, even Devin Ravenel, one-on-one, most of the time in the Sun Belt, I think they're going to win those.
And not only that, they then had it was man coverage, and they would pull their safety from the box. So from the top, they'd pull one of their safeties down into the box. So then they have a stacked box with either 7 or 8 guys. So you have a one high safety who typically was cheating to Thornton's side because they're playing man coverage, which leaves like trying to put this in frame, this huge space just wide open. So when Brown would take that cut, and it was also some great route running by Reggie Brown, where he knew how long the RPO was going to take to develop, where he was either going to take 3 steps and cut in or right away would cut in. His 42-yard catch, he just went right off the line. His first step was in.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew exactly what to do. But the second that RPO or play action is happening, Centeo gives the ball to Black, and just that second or half a second of play action pulls in everyone that's in the box. So the 3 linebackers come in, the edge guy, not sure what his responsibility is, if it was to just crash in on the edge every single time, or if he was supposed to kind of leak out and cover that zone a bit. But every single time they would just take 2 to 3 steps in. The safety who came into the box would take 2 or 3 steps in. And then that's all the space you need. Reggie Brown one-on-one with a quick slant, boom, every time. And that's how they're just dicing up that defense. And then if you're going to sell out to stop the pass, then Centeo is going to give it to Black, or Centeo is going to keep it himself and run it. And it's just really a pick your poison. And Todd Centeo is the perfect quarterback to be playing this.
Yeah, he's been awesome, right? And I think Signetti was like, hey, if you graded him out, he probably wasn't even at a 70 for that game. And he would admit that. So like it wasn't even a great Centeo performance, but they ended up taking away his like huge losses. So he had 88 rushing yards and 209 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Like he was still pretty solid, even though it wasn't like his best showing, but it kind of shows what he can do in the offense. And then even quickly defensively, I think the thing I really like about them is that the defense, like the defensive line, is built. It seems like it's built to stop the run first.
Yeah.
I feel like so like they're good at stopping the run. You got Jalen Walker up there. I thought Mateo Jackson was really good alongside Walker when they were trying to stop the run, and they had Jackson in there.
Mateo Jackson's a fantastic run stopping linebacker.
Yes.
It's a shame that he doesn't have like the top end speed to be, an every down backer. But when he's in there on obvious run situations, he's good.
He's so good. And then Torres Jones does a nice job at some of the coverage spots. It's a really good group. But I like that the defensive line is able to create pass rush pressure, but they still feel like they're like a run stop first unit. So like Edwards and Carpenter and Ukwu, those guys can get after the passer, but they're not just like straight speed guys. Like they're in there and creating some things that they can do against the run. And I feel like that's where they're at their best. They can still pass rush. And they also dialed up blitzes like later in the game so well, where it's like those guys are stopping the run. They're, focusing the offensive line. And then Surratt had a sack. I think Jalen Walker got close to coming home at least once or twice. Like they were, they were really getting to him with some of the blitzes, plus the defensive line. I think Chauncey Logan at corner was really good when they put him in man and looked like shockingly confident, in my opinion, for a true freshman. No, he was making some plays where it was like one-on-one with him. He had the near interception. The near interception was pretty incredible. You got to give him some credit for that. Legitimately, I thought he was fantastic and will get a lot of playing time. I think he's a guy that is athletic enough that he can lock a lot of people down. His stats are pretty darn impressive. So
Yeah, and I think that pressure that you mentioned, the blitzes that they were dialing up, were key in that Jalen Walker interception as well. I didn't really fully look at the film on that one, but I'd imagine Chase Bryce was getting a little happy feet because it was a quick hitter, boom, boom. Walker may have shown blitz and then backed out of the last second, and that's how he was hit backpedaling right into the hands. But huge interception, a terrible mistake by Chase Bryce because I don't think JMU wins that game if he doesn't throw that interception.
I think they still clip him.
They could. I mean, they very well could. It could have.
Rolling.
I mean, that defense was just playing lights out in the second half. The defensive backs were covering. I mean, isn't it fitting that the game-winning play was a Q Reed forced incompletion? Like
such a good hit.
Like it's me and you have been ragging, or maybe more so me than you, have been ragging on the secondary, saying they're not great. If the front seven doesn't get home, they're going to get eaten alive back there. And then what do to win the game? They strap up App State's wide receivers and just lock them down and then have a forced incompletion. So, man,
it was awesome. And the Jalen Walker play was really impressive because it wasn't that many yards between him and Bryce. Like Bryce was throwing a bullet and he got up and snagged. Like, he was very fast. I think the announcer even was like, this JMU team won't quit. And it was like, oh, that's because the ball was intercepted. Like he wasn't expecting it. And then it was like, wait a second, they're about to take the lead here. And they did. It really started spiraling. And I think it's a clear case that there's momentum in football.
Unfortunately, I may have to agree with you a little bit. After our case study of Sam Houston State and our case study of this game, I don't know if momentum is much of a thing as – didn't we have an entire argument about momentum on this podcast?
I think so. I guess you could argue that it's just like confidence. But I think
I was going to say it's confidence.
Our friend Dom texted up in the second half and was like, oh, App State's folding. And I think that was kind of true. Like they kind of – once it started to really unravel, it was like, I don't think they're getting it back.
Yeah, and App State fans were not happy.
No, they're pretty pissed.
They were pissed. They were not as like at the coaching staff and everything. It was quite interesting to watch. Any other takeaways? Do you want to shout out your boy Chauncey Logan anymore? Or
he did play really well.
No, I know he did, and I'm wrong. I'll go on record. I'm very wrong about Chauncey. Well, maybe not wrong. I just didn't have as much hope in him as you did.
He's so athletic. That's what I just feel like he's got to be out there sometime. Like he was forcing some incompletions and was feeling pretty confident out there. So I was excited with that. I thought everybody played pretty darn well. Jamari Edwards was unbelievably good.
Yeah.
He's really good. So they're good.
Yeah.
They're good.
They're good at football. I wouldn't be surprised if they finish this season with a lot of wins. Like I thought App State, that was the toughest game on the schedule.
What's your minimum for wins now? What's your weird ballpark?
8.
Yeah, I think for me it's like 7 or more.
Like
which if they go 4-4 the rest of the way, that's 7.
Yeah. And here's the thing. They got Texas State next, and we'll talk about it. Is that a letdown spot? It could be. And we'll break that down in just 1 second. But then they go to Arkansas State at Georgia Southern. Both of those teams aren't good.
I think those are tough. I think those are going to be tough.
I don't, because they just went into Boone and did that.
I don't know.
Boone is a different animal. Boone,
it is, but you're also like amped up for that game. I don't know how amped up you are for Arkansas State, but it's still a test.
Jonesboro, Arkansas isn't necessarily the same atmosphere as Boone. I think they'll hype themselves up. Marshall's going to be a tough game, but Marshall's also the same team that just lost to Bowling Green.
They've dropped 2 in a row.
Yeah. Then Louisville. Louisville's up and down. It depends on which Louisville you get. It depends.
Cunningham's scary though.
Cunningham's scary, but Sutterfeld isn't.
He hasn't been great as a coach.
And he might not be the coach there. They might be in complete and utter turmoil by the time November 5th hits. Who knows what's happening in Louisville? At ODU, that's going to be Bridgeforth East. That's a home game. Georgia State sucks.
That's a home game.
Georgia State sucks. Coastal Carolina, overrated. I mean, where's another loss? Maybe Louisville.
Cunningham against, I guess, what they just beat.
Yeah, and
they just beat against South Florida. He had 9 carries for 113 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Look, it's going to be Cunningham against the favorite for Heisman. I mean, that's what it's going to be.
That's
And
true.
I'm going to
Cunningham's
take
today was
I'm
a
going to take the
superstar.
odds on. I'm going to bet on the Heisman favorite to win that game against Malik Cunningham.
I guess we should get into Texas State then, unless you have anything else major from this very impressive win.
Something else might come up in my head.
Yeah.
And then we might just have to talk about it. But boom, is this what you want to talk about when it comes to Texas State?
Kind of think it is a letdown spot. That doesn't mean they're going to lose. They're like 3 touchdown favorites, basically. But the weather seems like it stinks. Which it's family weekend, which is like notoriously a quieter sellout, which I know I'm being a little harsh there, but typically the families aren't as loud as like if people are coming from out of town who really like are coming just for the football to watch the game. Sometimes it's families who don't care about football that are showing up because it's what you do on family weekend. But plus like leftover hurricane rain, I think it could be like not quite the same atmosphere. The positive thing is that Texas State sucks. Like they're really bad.
Yeah, Texas State is really, really bad. They just played against Houston Christian.
They just changed their name from Baptist to Christian.
What's the point of that?
I think it was a university thing, but it also impacted the football team midseason, which just was funny.
Because they started in Houston Baptist, right? Like this is a new change.
Oh yeah, they were Houston Baptist like in week 1.
They only put 34 up on them. That's not good.
I just don't think they have a very good team.
So I guess this is the spot where we'll break down who Texas State is really quick before we dive further into if this is a letdown spot for them. So it's time for the 3-notch preview. As always, we'll break it down. And to get all your libation needs, head on over to 3-notched, the Valley Collab House in Harrisonburg. There's a place in Richmond, Roanoke, Charlottesville, and I believe Virginia Beach. So check that all out. And a quick breakdown of the Texas State Bobcats. They're 2-2 this season. This is their first Sun Belt game, led by Jake Spavital. He's 11-29, 28 in his career. 2021, they were 4-8, not great. Against the spread, though, if you're into betting, they were 7-5, so a winning record against the spread. This year, their win over-under was set at just 4.5, and they're halfway there, man. They're halfway there. This 2-2 record is the best start since 2016 for Texas State, which is sad. They're not a good program. Their EPA is minus 1.44, which is 71st in the nation, minus 4.4 in offense, minus 2.1 in 7th in defense. And they have the 7th most returning offensive production in the nation, yet they're one of the worst offenses in the nation at the same time. SP Plus, they're minus 19.8, and that is good for 124th in the nation of 131 teams. Point per drive, their net point per drive is negative 0.95. Defensive points per drive, they only score 1.4, and they allow 2.3 points per defensive drive. They're not great, like at all. There's nothing redeeming about this team.
Probably fair. They have a couple individual guys that I think are fairly interesting. The quarterback, I don't think is terrible. And Lane Hatcher, he's got 10 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, averaging 266 yards a game. And then the one receiver, Ashton Hawkins, is actually been really good. 34 catches, 308 yards, 5 touchdowns in 4 games. He had 13 catches for $114 and a touchdown against Baylor.
Yeah.
So he like there's at least a guy that there is like, oh, okay. They have a go-to receiver who could stretch the defense. I mean, he's had a touchdown catch in every game so far. So that'll be interesting to see how they try to stop him. But they're not great. I think Spavital probably is close to the hot seat, I would think. Like I think at some point with the Sun Belt getting a lot of traction, they would want to win some games. So it's a program that's kind of down on its luck and needs some things to go right. But I don't know. If they show up, they at least have a couple guys that could, if JMU is flat, can make it interesting.
Yeah, awesome. So is this a letdown spot for JMU?
I think so. It doesn't mean they're going to lose, but I think it's definitely not a great spot. I think because the weather doesn't help in terms of like the atmosphere. I don't know. It doesn't. I'm not blaming anyone who like doesn't go in the rain, but it's just probably not going to be quite like what they're. If it was 75 and sunny, I think there'd be more people in the stands, even though it's a sellout rate. I don't think that's necessarily debatable. So
yeah,
interested to see how they respond to it. I know Signetti's got them locked in on like, hey, don't want this to be a letdown spot. Don't want this to be a letdown spot. Like you got to show up and play well.
Yeah, do they have the mousetraps set out?
I don't know if they set out mousetraps, but that's the same thing, right? Like App State was doing that, and they kind of had a letdown against Troy, I would say.
Big time, yeah.
They needed a winner to win. So there's some pressure on this game for sure. But they are better than them. Like I think it's of all the teams on their Sunbelt schedule, if I could put anyone in the game after App State at home, it would probably be Texas State.
Yeah, for sure. Texas State, not a great team, but maybe it's a letdown spot. But JMU's been nearly unbeatable at home. I think it might be a letdown spot, but Texas State's offense is like so bad that they might not even crack double digits against this JMU defense. That I wouldn't be surprised if the Dukes managed to cover the 22-point spread in this one just by putting up like 35.
ESPN does like a little efficiency ranking
Yeah.
for every team. Offensively, they have Texas State 119th out of 131 teams, which is the worst mark in the Sun Belt. They also have them as one of the worst special teams. They're 125th out of 131, a little better on defense, but it's not a very good team.
Yeah, overall, I think CBS Sports has them ranked as the top 25 one of the top 25 worst teams alongside Georgia State. Not a good look for the Sun Belt. But this isn't another App State. They're not playing like a Louisiana. They're not playing the Raging Cajuns. They're not playing one of the mid-tier Sun Belt teams. Like this is a bottom feeder Sun Belt team. So yeah, it could be a letdown spot. The JMU players could be listening to this podcast. They could be reading in the media. They could be looking at the film themselves and just say, damn, this team stinks. But I hope I'd like to think that it's not, because I'm trying to think of another letdown spot in the Signetti era that actually became a letdown, and I can't think of one.
They've been really, really good. It's just, I guess there's a higher, I don't know if this is that much higher of a level though. Like, is Texas State drastically better than like Villanova?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
Man, yeah. So, yeah. I don't think there's not much for me to break down with this Texas State game. Like,
oh, here's a question for you. Do you care about the Everett Withers storyline?
Kind of. I think it's kind of fun, but I mean, he's not there anymore. He left the program in worse shape than he found it, and then he failed upwards to be like the defensive backs coach at the New York Football Giants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny that it's like the Everett Withers Bowl, but it's just, I mean, he left as much as we hate Everett Withers, he's a key reason we are here. So like, I find like he was not a great person, like when it came to like handling the media and just like being weird and having to watch the film and all of that. But like, he was a key piece in getting Vad Lee to JMU. He was a key piece in setting up the success. He just couldn't coach defense. Like an entire 33% of the game, if not more, he just like forgot how to coach when he was like a defensive specialist. So while we all hate Everett Withers to a point, I think we're an X that are still upset at our X, but we're in a better place than we were with the X, you know?
I think that was described beautifully. Yeah. It's one that like, I don't really care. I have no like ill will toward him, because even as much as like he was kind of abrasive and stuff.
I got to watch the film to confirm that one.
Just some weird stuff with the media, and was just kind of cranky sometimes, and obviously was very quick to like leave, was looking kind of for every opportunity to not coach an FCS team. Yeah, he did, like, and even the uniform stuff, like as dumb as that sounds, like him, championing like different uniforms was like kind of cool. And I think maybe helped in recruiting and gives them like all these different looks that people can look like. There's some positive things that he did. So I don't care. And it's also, again, like if they played Mike Houston in ECU, that would be electric to me. If he was there, him not being there and having a horrible tenure. And now I don't know what he does currently. Actually,
I think he won like 2 games with Texas State. I think he's
South Florida or something now. But it's Temple. It's Temple. That's what it was.
But not a head coach, right?
Not head coach. He's the associate head coach at Temple. So like, I mean, he hasn't really like stuck since he left JMU. He went
didn't even stick at
2-10,
JMU,
2-10,
really.
3-8 from right. He wasn't at JMU for very long. So I don't really have any hard feeling. Like I don't want to beat Texas State more because he was there. Like it just doesn't mean anything to me.
I did see Jordan Brown tweet something.
Mm-hmm.
me try and pull it up so I know exactly what he said. Oh, Jordan Brown has a weird name on Twitter. It's not Jordan Brown. What is it?
The other storyline that I'll stall and say is interesting, though. Harry O'Kelly's younger brother is the punter for Texas State, which I thought was fun. And Harry talked to the DNR and Noah, and he had a quote in an article that I thought was pretty funny, where it was like, if he punts a lot, I get to see him punt a lot, and it would also be good for JMU. So that's sort of the best of both worlds.
He's away with words.
So he can root for his brother to punt 12 times, and JMU will win by 50. So it's actually an interesting spot for him. He doesn't have to root for Texas State to win.
Sounds awesome. I don't know what his @ is on Twitter.
I don't know either.
I'm gonna look this up. This is what we all tune into the JMU Sports News podcast for.
Yeah, especially live.
All right, whatever. I'll figure it out and tweet it. But it was just something like kind of throwing shade at Everett Withers, which I thought was quite interesting. So I think for some of the old players who played under Withers and kind of were burned by him, both in his coaching abilities and his just reasoning to leave. So sorry, he's really bad at like coaching defense.
It was pretty impressive that the same players that were giving up like 50 to Colgate the next season were able to follow it up with a national championship.
Like the best defense.
Like, what are you
JMU
doing?
see? Like,
yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting on those fronts. I do think the Arkansas State Georgia Southern games after that and we'll get into them more, obviously. I think those are little trap games.
No.
I think those are tough. Arkansas State's not that bad. I don't think Georgia Southern's that bad.
Okay.
And they're on the road.
Updated look at the schedule with this App State game, with the win. We have to break it down. What do we think the final records are going to be? I feel like this should become a segment every week where we break it down. Give me your updated prediction on how this season ends.
I think they're going to go 8-3.
Okay, where are their losses coming?
They're gonna win. They're gonna win 10 games, aren't they? That's what's so hard about it. I'll say they lose to Louisville.
Okay.
Even though I don't know that's guaranteed. I kind of think Georgia Southern clips them.
Why?
It's just a feeling that my
okay. Why?
Because I don't think they're that bad. They throw it a ton and have pretty good skill guys, which I think is probably the best recipe to beat JMU. It's on the road. It's before Marshall, where I think there could be a legitimate like game day buzz by that point, where it's like, hey, you beat Georgia Southern, you might be hosting game day, which that's a whole nother story. Some people don't like game day, I learned. But I think they could lose that one. Like, I think it's like kind of a trap game on the road against a team that's getting better. So I could see them getting tripped up there, and then you lose to Louisville, and then like at ODU is hard, and I think Coastal's still hard because depending on McCall's health, they've got some pretty good players.
Okay.
Realistically, though, that's probably not going to. I think they could win 9 or 10 games, actually. That's probably more realistic.
I think they win 10 games.
They're so good, man.
I think they go undefeated in Sun Belt.
What if they win out?
I think they go undefeated in Sun Belt play and lose to Louisville.
That would be insane. This one's a big one here. Just get to 4-0, take care of business against the crappy Texas State to really affirm, like, to show me for sure. Like, all right.
If they win this game, if they cover the spread in this game, which is about 22 points, I'll be really interested to see what it closes at. But if they can cover the spread against this game, against Texas State, I'm fully bought in. I'm 99% bought in, but this would just push me completely in. And I'll be on Twitter petitioning for the college football committee to let us in.
Yeah, I think that if they do go undefeated, it would be JMU Twitter would be incredible. So that's worth seeing just because there would be people going crazy. I also like that, like at the beginning of the season, I was tweeting from my personal account that JMU was the best team in Virginia, which was only like a quarter of a joke. People thought I was like really kidding. It was like, no, like if you watched,
but now you like, look and there's, according to all advanced metrics, JMU's the best team in Virginia.
Well, and like other fan bases are like, yeah, it's not even an argument here. Like they're better. That's hilarious.
And then I saw someone else tweeted, JMU's the best team in the DMV. And someone responded, I think you forgot Maryland existed. And they responded, no.
It's so like validating as a fan. That's part of why this win was so great, was because how many years did you have to listen to UVA fans when you'd be like, or Virginia Tech
Or
fans.
Tech fans were the worst.
Yeah.
We have a national champ. We have 2 national championships. Well, you're playing JV. Well, you have no appearances.
Like
Or maybe even
interacting,
you don't have a single trophy. So miss me with that.
interacting with like UVA fans and Tech fans. They'd be like, oh, nice win over Delaware. Like you wouldn't hang with us. It's like, no, like you guys stink. You don't understand. And now they played
us a chance.
Now they played 3 games at the FBS level, and they're like, oh, we get it now. And it's like, yeah, like they have very good players, and this is a team that doesn't even have Antoine Wells, Diamante Tucker Dorsey, Wesley McCormick.
Here's a question for you. Want to play the what if game?
Yeah.
Does Tucker Dorsey make that interception?
Completely nonsensical question. I have no idea. That was the best what if. I thought you were going to say, like, what would the score have been if they had all 3? Tucker Dorsey. Meg, here's a question for you. Does Antoine Wells catch the deep ball that Terrence Green caught for a touchdown?
Yes.
Probably. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll take Chauncey Logan over any corner any other day, though.
I mean, Chauncey Logan will soon be playing wide receiver, and his height.
That's actually a take I do want to share here. Kurt Signetti, if you're listening, and we know you are, there's no reason. Maybe you sort of experiment with this later in the season, but really do it next year. Chauncey Logan should play wide receiver and cornerback. He'd win Heisman pretty easily. Desmond Howard type thing.
We Thomas at Dookie 95 had a little chime in about Everett Withers, and I think this is a good point. No ill will to him. Just still can't believe he thought that was a job upgrade. That's why I want this game. That makes sense. Okay. I like
that.
Yeah,
that was pretty dumb. Even in the moment, that felt really dumb, where he was just like, I got to get FBS. It's like, yes, anytime you can be like the 13th best team in Texas.
And also, I love when the Sun Belt wasn't good then. Like the Sun Belt's had this resurgence like recent in like the last 3 to 4 years. Really since COVID, when COVID hit and like App and Coastal were like ranked and we're going crazy, and then Coastal plays BY. Yeah, I think COVID put Sunbelt on the map. And then when Withers left, it was just a clear step down. Like you're building this FCS power that's going to compete with North. Well, maybe if he stays, that's not going to happen because again, he can't play defense. He can't coach defense. So JMU probably would have continued to lose to Colgate in the second round after getting a bye. But yeah, that was just that wasn't a step. I like that point. That's a good point.
And then, of course, JMU upgraded to a coach who would never have lost to Colgate in the second round. So, oh God. But anyway, no, it's kind of interesting to see. It's actually kind of fascinating to see because JMU's culture is so good. And this is a real point that I have, that I think it's really not easy for a coach to be successful, but you're able to have a certain level of success that can be hard to replicate if you go somewhere else. Like Mike Houston has done a pretty good job at ECU, but they just lost to Navy in overtime when they're 2-2, and they got some cranky little fans now. And it's like, it's hard to match those levels of success. I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to do that, which I also think is kind of interesting because Signetti, I guess, I thought he was older, but he's only 61. I don't mean that offensively, just for some reason I thought he was older. But he's 61, so it's kind of interesting. Like, he's obviously a very good coach. Does a Power 5 or someone try to make a play at him, and would he be interested, or would he want to stay at JMU for a decade or so and see if he can make him a monster? Just interesting.
Yeah, will be really interesting.
But yeah, Colgate losses, man. Gosh,
that shouldn't have been as funny as it was. But here we are. Okay, anything else you want to add on App State? I do want to touch real quick. The third downs were just terrible.
Oh yeah, what was the final stat on that?
Like 2 of 12, 2 of 14.
2 of 14, and then 3 for 6, which was really 3 of 5 on fourth downs. Fourth down aggression, I forgot to mention that. Put that in the newsletter. If he rolls the dice more, Signetti, I think that's a great sign.
Is he rolling the dice? And I don't mean this in a rude way.
Yeah.
Camden Wise is 1 for 3 on field goals this year.
I don't think
does he. If it's Radke, does he roll the dice as much? Because you have a certified 3 points in your back pocket. With Wise, like, it's a really small sample size. He could make the rest of his field goals the rest of the year and be fantastic. But right now, it's not necessarily a 100% given like it was with Racky. So maybe when it's a 32 yarder that's on the hash that Wise doesn't prefer, maybe in its 4th and 2, you're like, all right, let's go for it. Where with Racky, you're like, I know he's making this, so send out the team. We're getting 3 points.
Honestly, I hope someone asked him that question because I think it's a really good question. Because it's if Wise makes the 27-yarder earlier, are they not going for it later in the game? I have no idea. But yeah, also tough on Wise, right? Because it's such a small sample size. We truly have no idea. He's only kicked 3 field goals. One of them was blocked.
And so, like, in all honesty, he could finish the year like 18 of 20, and no one's gonna bat an eye.
Also, it was like a 27-yarder on a half that just stayed straight, which again, like you want to make that kick, but it wasn't like he was in the middle and he almost like whiffed the ball or something.
And like, he didn't really like extreme hook it to the left. It didn't break.
It wasn't like he was missing an extra point or something where it's like in the middle and you have nowhere to go and the ball like sprays off your foot. So there's that going for him. So interesting to see how
he is perfect on extra points.
This is true. I just hope they keep the aggression because like 3 of the drives they scored, I think the opening field goal and then 2 touchdowns later in the game had 4th down conversions on the drive. There's the one where they were down 28-10. It was like a 4th and 5. And they didn't necessarily need to go for it because you could have cut it to 2 possessions, but they ended up going for it and scoring a touchdown and just sort of continuing to chip away. I like when they go for it because I think the offense, if you give them 4 plays to go 10 yards, that seems like it puts way more pressure on a defense. And shouldn't that be what you're doing? Like there were so many times in the past where I'm sure if you polled like the opposing fan base and it's 4th and 1 from the Delaware 20, Delaware fans would be like, you know what, please send out Racky because it kind of keeps us in the game instead of just pounding someone and getting a 1st down. So I hope they're aggressive.
Well, the average fan thinks that you're gonna kick the field goal when you're up 4.
Who said that?
The announcer. The announcer kept late in the game when they were up 4 and like if they get the 4th down, they ice the game.
Oh, he assumed they would kick that for sure.
Well, he goes, well, the average fan would want you to kick the field goal here, but in today's football, you got to go for it. If you go for it here, you win the game. And he was trying to like act really smart about analytics. And I don't know if I was texting you or who I was texting.
I remember.
I don't think an average fan is thinking kick the field goal to make this 1 possession game a 1 possession game.
I think everyone was pretty excited, or at least maybe I'm speaking.
Yeah, everyone was hoping they would go for it, and when they went for it, we're like, that's the right call.
Yeah, if you get it, the game's over, and they didn't get it, but then they had to go 90 yards and still had to score a touchdown, and they didn't do it. So like, I think that made a ton of sense, and that's the kind of aggression that like, look, like we think we can get a yard. They didn't do it, but that's the kind of thing that I hope they maintain throughout the Sun Belt season.
Yep. All right,
awesome.
It's time for the award-winning segment of this podcast everyone waits for every single week. It's time for the Sun Belt Pick'em. Last week, I had a solid 6-3 record, while Bennett had an abysmal 5-4 record. What's the season record? We're not entirely sure. We do have to scrub back from last episode and figure that out. But I mean, moral of the story is I'm better than Bennett in this 1 week sample that we're using. We have a fantastic slate of Sunbelt action for this week. We're starting to gear up a little bit more Sunbelt action. A few terrible games like App State hosting the Citadel and Georgia State going up to Mitchie Stadium in West Point to take on Army. But other than that, we have a few great games on the docket for us. So let's start things off. Noon, CBS Sports Network. Army loves these noon games. Georgia State, Army. Who do you got?
Georgia State, Army. Yeah, so I actually recommended that people on multiple places, including text, take them to beat Coastal Carolina. Watch that game. They're horrible. Like I wouldn't ever recommend putting your money on them ever again. One of my friends
except for this week,
a full day because they suck so much. I'm taking Army here. Georgia State. They're horrible. I was wrong.
You and service academies though don't combine well. Remember the 2020 COVID season? Navy, man. Take Navy over BYU all day. Navy lost by 40.
I think it might have been more. I have a horrible track record of actually when I bet on service academies. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm going Army too, though. They're 7.5 point favorites, and I think that's about right. As Georgia State is one of the worst teams in the nation. The Citadel, they go down to App State, back in Kid Brewer Stadium in Boone. It's a 3:30 kick on ESPN Plus. What do you got?
I like App State in this one, bounce back spot. Their schedule the next 4 games is super easy. They should be 6-2.
Yeah, I'm with you. App State. If they have struggle with the Citadel, if the Citadel can run all over them, and this defense is actually that bad, they're going to have some big issues, but should dominate this game from start to finish. Gardner Webb, they travel down to Huntington, West Virginia. 3:30 kick with Marshall. Who do you got?
Marshall, a little disappointing after that Notre Dame win, losing 2 games in a row, but I think they get to 3-2 here. Then they play Louisiana on a Wednesday night the week after, which is when we really get the Fun Belt action on a Wednesday. But
Yep.
I think they win both those 4-2. They go to Harrisonburg on the 22nd for College game day.
Okay. I like how you're all the way on the game day train when 2 weeks ago you were like, there's no way in hell that JMU is getting game day at all this season. Now, look, man, if they both win out and get there, game day has to come. They just have to come. And apparently you ruffled some feathers with your game day take.
People hate game day.
People hate game day, apparently. I'm also with the Marshall Thundering Herd in that game. Gardner Webb is a really solid FCS school. They've looked really good against Coastal and against a few other FBS teams. But it's going to be a tough L here against Marshall. Georgia Southern against Coastal. This game's in Conway, in Myrtle Beach. Let's just call it Myrtle Beach. Georgia Southern's quarterback has thrown for over 1,200 yards this season, 8 touchdowns. I mean, can they go to Conway and take down Coastal Carolina, who've looked slightly underwhelming this season, but are 4-0?
I wonder exactly how travel it will work. It seems like during the day, Saturday, it'll be okay. Myrtle Beach is gonna get hit pretty good on Friday with weather, so I don't know exactly what the travel plans are.
They might be, that might push them up, and they might be getting in tomorrow
or something. Yeah, interesting stuff there to inside baseball. Georgia Southern's gonna win this game.
Wow.
Yeah, Coastal. As much as Georgia State sucks, Coastal is still very much a fraud.
If Coastal wins this game, there's no way that we go down to Georgia Southern and lose. I think Coastal wins. A weird travel schedule for Georgia Southern throws them off. Coastal's playing at home. They want to play for their families who were just impacted by Hurricane Ian. Come on, the storylines write themselves. South Alabama, they play the Raging Cajuns down there in Lafayette. Lafayette?
Yeah.
Did I say that the same way 3 different times?
I think so.
South Alabama, who do you got?
Louisiana stinks.
They're 2-2, 0-1 in Sunbelt.
They lost to Louisiana Monroe last week.
They did.
They stink. So I can't pick them. I'll take South Alabama, which is, I would say, behind Southern Miss.
No,
They're
your
probably
tweet,
one of the best.
Your tweet was wrong. You said that I'm a fan of Southern Miss. No. I'm a fan
They
of
beat
South
Tulane,
Alabama.
which is a transitive property win over Kansas State, which is a transitive property win over Oklahoma. Southern Miss took down Oklahoma.
JMU took down Miami and Texas A&M on the same Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think they're not beating JMU. They're in the West.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I think if we're talking transitive property wins, that's a more...
You think JMU is going to win the East?
I mean,
You
they
think they're
have
gonna
the
go-
leg up now. They
You
have
think-
a
you
huge
said they're
leg
gonna go
up.
undefeated in Sunbelt play. So
Yeah, they have to win. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're good.
so that's in the East. So their transitive property wins are equal to Southern Miss. So therefore, you think Southern Miss will win the West?
No. So I'm taking South Alabama as well. Liberty goes to ODU in Norfolk. I mean, this is an easy pick. Who do you got? Liberty's only a 3.5 point favorite.
I think Liberty's quarterback might be banged up, but I don't know this for sure. But he's really good when he's not hurt. So
Who's your pick?
I'm gonna take ODU.
I'm going to go Liberty because ODU's offense makes me sad.
Scored 29 against Arkansas State.
Cool. I could score 29 against Arkansas State's defense. UL Monroe takes on Arkansas State. Who do you got?
Arkansas State's going to bounce back here and win this one. They're going to be highly confident going into the JMU game, which is a trap game.
I'm going to go Monroe here because maybe they're not as fraudulent as we thought. Maybe they're not as bad as we thought.
Maybe.
They are 2-2. Arkansas State's just 1-3. And then wrapping things up before our JMU pick, Troy, Western Kentucky. Who do you have? Western Kentucky, by the way, I don't know where they're finding quarterbacks. It's insane. Bailey
Who's
Zappi
there?
last year. They have a D2 transfer who starts for him this year. But they brought in the West Virginia transfer, who's the active passing yards leader. And this D2 transfer beat him out.
Yeah,
Is now tearing it up.
he is tearing it up. I'm going to say Troy.
That's a wrong pick. It's Western Kentucky.
Who's Western? They have somebody that I know.
They had Bailey Zappi last year.
It's like a coach. There's some coach that has some connection to somewhere, and I'll look it up. It's probably super irrelevant.
All right, and last but not least, as Bennett looks this one up, it's 1:30 p.m. kick on ESPN Plus. Bridgeforth Stadium at Zane Shoker Field. Kickoff temperature will be about 59 degrees. Texas State comes into JMU on a wet and rainy day as Hurricane Ian makes its way through the Shenandoah Valley. It's family weekend, but there might be less people in that stadium than 25,000. It is a sold-out crowd, but that rain might keep people away. Texas State, JMU, who do you got?
I'm taking JMU to win 35-17, and I believe what it is for the connection, since a lot of you want to know, I think he's the head coach at Western Kentucky is Clay Helton's younger brother.
I'm so glad you told me that. I was on the edge of my seat, and man, am I glad I know that piece of information.
It was as irrelevant as I had worried. But 35-17, JMU wins. There's a lot of rain coming down, but some people are there. I've already got confirmation from at least one person that they're going, and I know that this game is going to be electric.
So I think JMU wins this game in an absolute slop fest. I think they win this one 28-3. I don't think that Texas State can really do much, and if they're forced to having to run it, they're going to have a bad time. JMU's only allowed 84 rush yards on the entire season. So if the Dukes can force this into a one-dimensional game, both because of their play and because of the weather, don't think Texas State's going to move the ball all that much. I think JMU will move the ball, but will struggle. They'll put up 4 touchdowns, thanks in part to Kaelon Black, Latrell Palmer. Hopefully Percy's back. We'll try and track that down. Not sure what's happened, but keep it locked on our Twitter if we figure that out. So I think JMU wins. They cover. They're 22-point favorites as of right now. The over-under is set for 50. I think hammer the under.
Really? They've also had some weird weather kind of in the past. Wasn't one family weekend against like Stony Brook all messed up for some reason? I feel like that had happened.
Season opener against Robert Morris.
Yeah, remember the Robert Morris? They played on like a Thursday.
Yeah, because of Florence.
And Jimmy Moreland had a pick 6, so maybe it's, I don't know, maybe Chauncey Logan, a little blast from the past there reminds us all of Jimmy. Just bigger.
Love it. All right. Anything else you got to add?
Field hockey, ranked 18th in the country. Volleyball's rolling. Women's golf got confirmed from a source that they had a really good showing at a recent tournament. Men's soccer, they're kind of hanging in there. So
awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News Podcast. My name is Jack Fitzpatrick. That's Bennett Conlon. We had ourselves a fantastic time tonight. We'll be back next week breaking down the Texas State game and giving a little bit of a preview to the Arkansas State game. It's been a fantastic Wednesday. See you guys next time. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.